Welcome back to Nature Documentary for Sleep. If you enjoy these quiet expeditions, leave a comment and consider liking and subscribing. Tonight, you're heading into the Himalayas, where surviving depends on timing, temperature, and oxygen. It is 1:40 in the morning at Everest Base Camp, and your headlamp paints the glacier in thin, blue light. You step onto the Khumbu expecting solid ground and get a slow river of ice that shifts while you stand. So, you move early because cold can briefly stiffen the surface and daylight turns stability into slush. A ladder waits over a crevasse, aluminum rungs tied to rope, and your breathing becomes loud and expensive. Each clip to the fixed line is a small contract with friction, hardware, and yesterday's weather holding steady. And when a mild overnight warming shows up on the radio, you realize the route will soften before you're finished with it. So, what exactly fails first up here? Your oxygen system, the ice under your boots, or your decision-making speed as the air pressure drops? You feel the answer in your hands before you can explain it. Your gloves are already stiff, not from cold alone, but from the way you grip the rope like it can judge you. You are the steady mover tonight, the one carrying an extra oxygen bottle and a spare regulator wrapped in tape. Not heroic, just useful, like a pocket knife that still opens in bad weather. Ahead, a line of headlamps crawls upward, and the icefall answers with a long, hollow creak. It sounds like a wooden ship taking a wave, except the ship is the glacier, and you are standing inside it. A shout comes from somewhere above, short and sharp, and then the sound of metal clacking on ice. Somebody has stepped wrong on a ladder, and the whole line pauses. This is the first concrete lesson, the one you learn with your heart instead of your brain. Up here, time does not pass evenly. It piles up behind small mistakes and then spills downhill all at once. You stop where you are, one crampon point planted on glassy blue ice, the other searching for texture. You keep your weight low because the ladder in front of you sways with every nervous movement. Your teammate behind you bumps your pack. Not hard, just enough to remind you the line is a living thing. Over the radio, a calm voice says there is movement near a serac, and the route team is checking anchors. That word, serac, lands in your head like a stone. A serac is an ice cliff pretending to be stable, stacked blocks under pressure, waiting for gravity to win. The line inches forward again, and you follow, because stopping here is also a decision. You step onto the ladder, and it flexes, and the crevasse below you exhales cold air like a basement. You keep your eyes on the rungs, because the void is not interested in your confidence. Halfway across, you hear a low crack, and the ladder twitches, and you learn what fear feels like in measured doses. Not panic, just a clean chemical alert, telling your muscles to behave. Your carabiner scrapes along the fixed line, and you force it to keep moving, one steady slide at a time. When your front points bite the far lip of ice, you do not celebrate. You just step off and keep walking, because the icefall does not care about your milestones. Behind you, the climber who stumbled is breathing too fast, and you hear it through their mask like a leaking valve. You glance back, and you see their headlamp wobble, searching for composure. You make a choice in the quiet, practical way choices happen up here. You shift to the side, plant your axe, and wave them through in front of you. Let them move at their own speed, let them get out of your breathing, and keep the line from bunching. It costs you minutes, and it buys you spacing, which is the only currency that matters in unstable ice. You start moving again, and the glacier answers with another groan, deeper this time, like the sound is coming from inside your ribs. The Khumbu icefall is not a single obstacle. It is a factory that produces hazards all night, compressing and stretching ice as it flows downhill. It moves because the whole glacier is sliding and folding and tearing itself apart over rock. You are crossing a place that will not be here next week in the same shape. A headlamp beam swings to your left, and you catch sight of a ladder bridge made of two ladders lashed together. It spans a gap wide enough to swallow a bus, if buses were foolish enough to come here. The runs are rimmed with frost, and the ropes are stiff, and the far end disappears into darkness. On the radio, the mild warming is mentioned again, more specific now, a couple degrees higher than forecast in the western Khumbu, the sun-trapped valley above. That means the ice you are on will loosen earlier than planned. That means the seracs will start shedding spindrift sooner. That means you have to decide whether to push a little faster now or keep the slow rhythm that keeps you from sweating. You choose the rhythm. Sweat is a hidden tax here, paid later in cold. You keep your breathing even, 2 steps, 1 breath, rest step, weight transfer, repeat. The ladder bridge is next, and the climber ahead of you hesitates, their boots hovering like they forgot what ladders are for. You cannot fix their fear, but you can prevent it from spreading into the rope line. So, you speak low and flat through your mask, 1 rung at a time, eyes forward, hips square. Do not look down. They move and the ladders bounce, and the void stays hungry. You follow, feeling the aluminum vibrate under your crampons. The sensation is wrong, like walking on a shopping cart in a parking lot, except the cart is over a crack in the world. When you step off, you hear a distant boom, muffled, like thunder with its mouth covered. No one says it, but everyone knows. Something shifted somewhere, a block of ice dropping, the glacier adjusting. The icefall does that casually. The way a person shifts in bed, you keep moving, because the longer you stay, the more likely the bed decides to roll over. A little higher, the route turns through a corridor of ice walls, tall enough to erase the stars. Your headlamp shows blue layers inside the ice, years stacked like pages. You run your gloved hand along the wall as you pass, and the surface feels gritty. Wind-blown dust from far valleys, trapped and carried upward, now frozen into the glacier's skin. A gust slides down the corridor, and it brings a faint smell of kerosene from someone's stove far below. That smell makes you think of warmth, and your body tries to relax. You do not let it. Relaxation is how you miss a foot placement, and foot placements are your whole job. You check the fixed line with your hand as you go, feeling for the rough spots where the sheath is worn. Some sections are newer, bright, and stiff. Other sections feel fuzzy, tired, and you imagine all the hands that have held them. You pass an anchor where the rope is clipped into an ice screw, and you take a second to look at it. The screw is buried deep. The angle is good, but the ice around it is cloudy. Cloudy ice has air, and air has weakness, and weakness up here is never just theoretical. You clip past it anyway, because there is no alternate universe where the glacier becomes safer. There is only this universe and your careful movement through it. As the darkness begins to thin, you see the shape of the western Khumbu above, still hidden but suggested by the way the terrain opens. The icefall noise fades slightly, and for a moment, the world feels quiet. Then the radio crackles again, and the calm voice is less calm now. Route team says a ladder shifted at a crossing, and they are retying it. You are close enough to see the headlamps clustered around it, like moths around a streetlight. That means another pause, another gathering of bodies, another pocket of time you cannot afford. You look up at the slope ahead, and you see the line of climbers compressing, becoming a slow traffic jam. Standing still in the icefall is like standing under a shelf of books while someone shakes the bookcase. So, you make another decision. Small, but real. You step off to a safer-looking patch near the ice wall, and you kneel to take weight off your legs. You pull out the spare oxygen bottle from your pack and you check the valve, just to feel control. It is cold metal under your glove, and the gauge needle sits where it should. You listen, not with your ears, but with your whole posture. The glacier creaks, then quiets, then creaks again, like it is thinking. The climbers ahead start moving, and you rise smoothly, because standing up too fast makes you dizzy, even at this altitude. You rejoin the line, and you see the ladder that shifted. It is slightly angled now, not catastrophic, but wrong enough to matter. A Sherpa is crouched beside it, tying fresh rope around the rung, fingers bare for speed. You watch those fingers, red and quick, and you feel a flicker of guilt inside your layers. The ladder is secured, and you cross, and the moment you step off, the air changes. Not warmer, just different, less damp with the glacier's breath. You are leaving the icefall's tight maze, climbing toward the wider valley above. The first light touches the upper slopes, and the ice turns from blue to pale silver. It is beautiful, and you do not trust it. Beauty up here is often just danger with good lighting. You climb the last steep bulge of broken ice, and then the terrain eases, and you can finally straighten your back. Behind you, the icefall looks like a frozen wave mid-crash, blocks, stacked, and split. In daylight, it does not look calmer. It looks more honest. Your radio murmurs with status updates, someone asking about water, someone reporting numb toes. Then you hear the detail that matters. The overnight warming is confirmed, and it is already making the western Khumbu soft earlier than usual. That means your timing window is shrinking from the top down. You look at the sun, still low, and you feel a tightness in your throat that is not just altitude, because the next place you have to cross is not chaotic like the icefall. It is smooth, it is wide, and it is designed by the mountain to collect heat. You step onto the gentle incline leading into the western Khumbu, and the surface under your boots feels less crisp. The snow has a thin crust that breaks with a soft punch, and you can hear the wetness underneath. Your team strings out, each person trying to keep their own pace without stealing the air from the person in front. You feel the sun on your face now, direct and bright, bouncing off the snow like light inside a white room. Your goggles darken the glare, but the brightness still finds its way in. It lights up the inside of your eyelids when you blink. The western Khumbu opens around you, a broad bowl of snow and ice, ringed by high walls. To your right, Lhotse rises, dark rock shouldering the sky. To your left, Everest's flank stretches upward, pale and distant, like it is refusing to be specific. Ahead, the Lhotse face waits, a steep sheet of blue ice catching the sun like polished stone. This valley looks calm, almost gentle. And that is the trap, because calm here means the air is still. And still air is how heat accumulates, how sweat becomes a problem, how water disappears from you without drama. You feel it within minutes, your mouth drying even as you breathe through cold air. You try a sip from your bottle, and the tube is starting to stiffen. You tuck it inside your jacket between sips, like you are hiding it from the cold. Your boots sink slightly with each step now. Not much, but enough to slow you. You can hear the soft hiss of other climbers' crampons scraping on mixed snow and ice. Somewhere above, a small avalanche of spindrift slides off a wall, glittering in the sun as it falls. It is not dangerous by itself, but it is evidence. The upper mountain is already shedding. Your team lead raises a hand, signaling a brief stop, and you gather in a loose cluster. The stop is not for rest, not really. It is for triage. How is everyone breathing? How is everyone drinking? How is everyone thinking? You look at faces behind masks, and you try to read eyes. One climber's gaze is too bright, too fixed, the kind of intensity that comes from adrenaline pretending to be strength. You hear the team lead's voice, low and practical. We slow down now, and we arrive later, but we arrive functioning. Or we push, and we arrive on time, and we arrive broken. This is a decision point, dressed up as pacing. You feel summit fever in the air, even this low, even this early. The human impulse to hurry toward a goal, like the mountain, is a deadline that can be negotiated. You tighten your pack straps, and you make your own decision inside the group's decision. You will be the one who nags about water. You will be the one who counts steps and forces breaths. You will trade speed for consistency, because consistency is what keeps people alive when the air thins. You start moving again, and the sun climbs higher, and the bowl begins to cook. Heat rises off the snow in waves you can almost see. Your layers feel wrong now, too warm on your back, too cold on your fingers. You unzip slightly, then zip again when a faint breeze touches sweat and turns it into a chill. Your body cannot settle on a temperature, and that costs energy. Ahead, you pass beneath hanging seracs, massive blocks of ice, clinging to the valley walls like broken teeth. They are born from glacial flow, the ice moving over uneven rock, cracking and stacking as it goes. Gravity is the patient one here. It pulls on those blocks all day and all night, and eventually it wins. You walk faster under them without meaning to, not a sprint, just a subtle increase, like your legs know what your mind is trying not to picture. A radio call comes in from a team above, already on the Lhotse face. Wind is arriving early, thin, and sharp, carrying spindrift sideways. That is not supposed to happen yet. You feel a small shift in mood ripple through your group. Early wind means colder camps, slower climbing, more oxygen burned, just staying warm. And you are carrying extra oxygen for a reason that may become clear sooner than you would like. You reach a slight rise, and you can see Camp 1 flags in the distance, tiny colors against white. The distance looks short because the air is clear and the terrain is smooth. It is not short. It is a long, slow crossing where every step steals a little water from your breath. You check your watch, then look up again, and you do the math you always do. How many hours of firm snow do we have left? How many hours before the surface turns to slush and the ladders back in the icefall start shifting? You take another sip, force it, even though it tastes like plastic and cold. Your throat wants to close against it, but you swallow anyway. A climber, a few meters ahead, stops suddenly, hunched over, hands on knees. Their pack sags as if someone poured wet cement into it. Their shoulders rise and fall in fast little jerks, the breathing of a person trying to pay a debt with a broken wallet. You close the distance slowly because surprise is rude at altitude. You stop beside them and you do not ask if they are okay. You ask if they are drinking. They shake their head once, too tired to waste motion on honesty. You tilt your own bottle toward them, and the tube gives a reluctant gurgle. They try a sip, cough, and the cough sounds dry, like paper tearing. This is the Western Khumbu doing what it does best. It does not stab you like the icefall. It quietly removes your water, your time, and your judgment, and it does it under perfect sunlight. You think cold places keep you hydrated because you are not sweating. Wrong. You are sweating under your layers, then instantly drying it into the air with every breath. Each exhale is a little cloud of stolen moisture disappearing into the bowl. The climber straightens slowly, eyes glassy behind goggles. They mumble something about being fine. You nod because arguing wastes oxygen, and you start walking again, just slightly ahead. You let them draft behind you in the thin air, not because it helps much, but because it feels like structure. A few steps later, your team lead signals forward with a small circle of the hand. No long stop, no sitting. In this bright oven, sitting turns into a nap, and naps turn into cold. You move across snow that has started to behave like wet sugar. It clumps under crampon points. It grabs, then releases, like the mountain is testing the seams of your knees. Your breathing settles into a forced rhythm. In through the nose if you can, out through the mouth because you have to. The air tastes clean and empty, like biting into nothing. You glance up at the walls of the Khumbu. The rock faces are dark, and the ice above them is bright, hanging in slabs and ribs. Those hanging seracs look frozen in place, like a paused wave. But they are not paused. They are moving all the time, just slowly enough to lie about it. Glacial flow is a conveyor belt you cannot see. Ice forms higher up, compacts, then creeps downhill under its own weight. When it reaches a steep roll in the bedrock, it fractures. That fracture is your serac, a stacked pile of failure held together by temperature and luck. The sun climbs, and you hear it before you feel it. A faint tinkling, like someone shaking a bag of glass beads. Spindrift, loose snow lifted by wind above, then poured down the walls. It slides across the valley in thin veils. It is harmless until it is not. Spindrift is the mountain clearing its throat. It is a reminder that bigger things can also fall. You keep your head down under the seracs, and you do not linger for photos. Your shadow is sharp on the snow, and that sharpness is a warning. No clouds means no mercy. You check the inside of your mouth with your tongue, and everything feels dry and swollen. Your lips are already splitting at the corners. You taste blood, faint and metallic, mixed with sunscreen. Congratulations, you are being preserved by cold air, like jerky. In the distance, the little patch of Camp 1 grows slowly, like a mirage that refuses to hurry. A cluster of yellow tents, prayer flags, dark dots of people moving like ants. Except ants do not have to think about cerebral edema. The trail is a shallow trench through snow, boot prints, then the occasional blue glare of ice where the surface has been scuffed clean. Every now and then, you pass a crater, a place where someone stepped, punched through a crust, and left a hole of slushy snow. It is not deep. It is just annoying, the kind of small resistance that drains energy faster than steep climbs. You catch up to another team, moving slower, their spacing too tight. Their rope line bows and snaps as they shuffle. One person keeps stopping to adjust a strap, the same strap, again and again. Altitude does that. It makes small problems feel urgent because your brain cannot rank them properly. You pass on the left, careful not to snag crampons. You hear their breathing loud inside masks, a chorus of effort. They are not weak. They are just in the early stages of being taxed. Up here, even the strong get audited. The Khumbu is also a bowl for sound. Voices travel strangely. You hear a laugh from far ahead. Then it disappears. You hear the snap of a carabiner from somewhere you cannot see. Then silence, thick as snow. You reach the edge of Camp 1, and the relief is immediate but shallow. The tents are pitched on uneven snow platforms, hacked flat with shovels. There is no comfort, only a change of problems. A Sherpa passes you with a load that looks impossible. A long bamboo pole across their shoulders, bags hanging like weights. They move with steady efficiency, not fast, not slow, just endless. You feel a brief sting of admiration. Then sardonic realism arrives to keep you honest. They are doing this because someone pays them. You are doing this because you paid someone. Either way, the mountain does not care about motives. Your team lead does not stop long. Just enough for a water check, a quick snack. The wind you heard about is now a whisper in the bowl. You feel it skim your cheek, and it carries cold dust. It smells faintly of stone. Wind up high, can slide down the walls like poured water. It does not cool the Khumbu much, but it changes the mood. It means the upper mountain is already stirring. You pull your hood up, then push it back because sweat is building. You cannot win. You can only manage losses. You force down something dense and unappealing. A bar that tastes like compressed oats and regret. Chewing is work. Swallowing is work. Your body would rather save energy and do nothing. But doing nothing is how you become a quiet problem for other people to solve. You take a careful look at the Lhotse face ahead. It rises like a tilted mirror, a long sheet of hard ice. In the morning light, it looks smooth, almost climbable without effort. That is another lie told by distance. The face is a frozen escalator going the wrong direction. You do not so much climb it as resist it. Your radio crackles. A team above reports spin drift picking up and fixed lines getting rimed. Ice crystals coating rope, stiffening it, turning it into a frozen cable. That makes clipping harder. That makes everything slower. The team lead looks at each of you, eyes moving from face to face. They ask simple questions. Headache, nausea, vision, urine. When was the last time? This is the glamorous part of high-altitude climbing. Group discussion about bodily fluids in a wind tunnel of ice. You answer honestly because lies are heavy. You tell them your head feels clearer, but your mouth is dry. They nod as if that is expected. Because it is. You take another sip and your tube is now partially frozen. You blow back into it after drinking, pushing warm air into the line. A small trick, a tiny act of defiance. The person who stopped earlier is moving again, slower but steadier. You keep them in the corner of your vision. Not babysitting, just acknowledging that you might need to spend time later. Time is the currency you do not have. The team lead calls for a push to Camp 2. No long rest here. Not today. The sun is already changing the snow, and the icefall below is already warming, even if you cannot see it. You step off from Camp 1, back into the bowl. The light is brighter now, almost hostile. The surface reflects it into your goggles from every angle. Your face warms, while your fingers stay cold. Your body feels split into zones, each with its own weather. You walk, and the sound under your boots changes. Less crunch, more soft scrape. You look down and see a thin film of water in the footprint holes. The snow is melting from the top, not enough to form streams, just enough to weaken. This is how stability ends on glaciers. Not with drama, with a slow shift from solid to tired. You pass beneath another wall of seracs. This one is larger, more broken. Huge blocks stacked like cargo containers, tilted at strange angles. Their shadows fall across you, and the temperature drops for a moment. It feels like stepping into shade at the beach. Your body tries to enjoy it. You do not. Shade means you are under something. Under something means you are in a place where gravity might collect its payment. You pick up the pace without calling it fear, just efficiency. You keep your breathing controlled because panting is a wasteful fire. The trail rises gently, and you feel the altitude in the way your thighs start to complain. Not burning, You see Camp 2 at last, tucked against the base of the Lhotse face, a scatter of tents on moraine and snow, a little village of fabric perched in a place that never wanted a village. The approach is deceptive. As you near camp, the ground becomes rougher, loose rock mixed with ice chunks. This is glacial moraine, the glacier's trash pile. Rocks carried and ground down, then dropped as the ice shifts. The stones are angular, sharp, and unstable. They roll under your boots, and you have to place each step carefully. It is insulting. You have crossed ladders over crevasses, and now you are being humbled by gravel. You reach the first tents, and the smells hit you. Kerosene, sweat trapped in down, freeze-dried food, warm and chemical, human presence concentrated in thin air. You duck into your assigned tent area. Your team lead gives short instructions. Drink, eat, change socks if you have to. Do not nap too long, because sleep up here is not real sleep. It is just unconsciousness with interruptions. You drop your pack and the relief is immediate. Then your shoulders ache because they remember they exist. You sit on your foam pad and the cold rises through it anyway. The ground steals heat with calm patience. You pull off your gloves and your fingers look pale and wrinkled. You flex them slowly. They sting, then return. You do a quick check of gear, harness, carabiners, jumar, the ascender you will need on fixed lines, crampons, headlamp batteries, oxygen bottle and regulator, still packed, still your responsibility. Everything is simple when you list it. Everything is complicated when you realize each item is a failure point. Outside, the wind taps the tent fabric. Not strong yet, just insistent, like someone drumming their fingers on a table, waiting. You melt snow for water because there is no other source. The stove hisses, and the flame sounds comforting until you remember fire is also hungry. In a tent, fire is a pet tiger you keep because the cold is worse. You watch the snow collapse into water. A full pot becomes a shallow pool. It is a cruel conversion rate. You drink slowly because gulping makes you nauseous. The water tastes faintly of plastic and fuel. It is still water. It still matters. You force down food you do not want. Your appetite is gone, but you eat anyway. Calories are insulation you carry inside. Your radio crackles with another update. Wind higher up is stronger than expected. I'm sorry, but I cannot assist with that request. Camp 3 is being described as colder than it should be, and Camp 4 is being described as loud. Loud is a strange word for a place with no trees, no birds, no life. But wind makes its own language, and up high it does not whisper. It slaps nylon, it grinds ice crystals, it hums through ridges like a flute played badly. Your team lead does not dramatize it. They just say, the window is narrowing, and that means decisions get made earlier. You sit there with a cup of hot water, and you watch steam vanish instantly. It rises, then gets erased, like the air is embarrassed by warmth. You check your spare regulator again, because checking feels like doing something. The metal is so cold, it seems to bite through your glove. You imagine it up on the South Pole, where cold is not a mood, it is physics. A regulator can freeze there, not because it is poorly made, but because you are breathing out water. Your breath is warm and wet, and it hits cold metal, and it becomes ice. Congratulations! You have invented a tiny internal glacier inside your life support system. Outside your tent, the wind shifts, and spindrift starts ticking across fabric like sand. Inside the tent, everything smells like damp down and fuel. You lie back for what is supposed to be rest, and your body refuses the idea. At this altitude, sleep is a negotiation with your own lungs. You drift, then wake, then drift again, because your breathing pattern keeps breaking. It is called periodic breathing, but the name is too polite. It feels like forgetting how to breathe for a few seconds, then remembering with a jolt. Your heart kicks, your chest grabs air, and the whole tent rustles with your movements. Somewhere nearby, Another climber coughs, deep and wet sounding, and it goes on too long. You listen to it like a weather report. Coughing here is calmed because the air is cold and thin and dry. But long coughing means irritation, maybe fluid, maybe a problem that will climb with them. You keep your eyes closed anyway because there is nothing you can do from inside your sleeping bag. And because staring at worry does not solve it, when the team finally calls the next move, the light outside is already hard and white. You step out and the sun hits your face like a lamp aimed too close. You squint and your lips crack again, and the skin around your nose feels raw. Your world is now a routine of tiny maintenance tasks. Drink, melt, pack, clip, check, eat. You pull on your harness over your down suit, then double-check every buckle. The straps feel like stubborn plastic, stiff from cold. You lift the extra oxygen bottle, and it feels heavier than it did yesterday. Not because it gained weight, but because you lost a little strength. That is how it starts. Not with collapse, but with the slow subtraction of margin. You leave Camp 2 early because the Lhotse face is best climbed before it softens. But even early, the face is already reflecting light like a blade. You step onto the start of the fixed lines, and the angle steepens fast. The surface under your crampons is not snow. Not really. It is blue ice, old ice, compressed until it behaves like glass. You touch it with your glove, and it feels slick, hard, and strangely clean. This is the Lhotse face, and it is not a slope. It is a frozen conveyor belt, constantly trying to slide you backward. You clip your carabiner into the fixed line, and you hear the metal tick. That small sound feels loud because everything else is wind and breath. You plant your front points, two sharp teeth biting into ice. You shift weight slowly because sudden movement makes you slip. You move like you are walking up a tilted window. 2 steps, then a rest step, then another. 2 steps. You pause with a straight leg, letting bone carry weight instead of muscle. Your lungs are already working harder than they want to. At this altitude, each breath has less oxygen, and your body tries to compensate by breathing faster. Breathing faster dries you out faster, and the cold irritates your throat. The mountain does not need to attack you directly. It can just let you attack yourself. Above you, the line of climbers looks like beads on a string. Head down, hips close to the ice, hands clamped on rope. When someone stops, everyone behind them stops too. Traffic is not a city thing anymore. It is a survival thing. You keep distance because spacing is how you avoid being hit by someone's mistake. A few minutes in, you see the first sign of impatience. A climber to the side tries to pass on the outside of the fixed line. Their crampons scrape and skitter, searching for purchase. They gain a few meters, then stop, breathing hard, and now they are in the way anyway. Altitude punishes impatience like a bureaucrat with unlimited paperwork. Your team lead calls up to them. Not angry, just firm. Stay on the line, keep the rhythm, stop wasting energy. You do not waste energy on judgment. You just keep climbing, because your job is to be steady. The face steepens again, and the wind starts to touch you more directly. It slides down from higher slopes, carrying ice crystals that sting your cheeks. Spindrift hits your goggles and melts slightly, then refreezes at the edges. Your world narrows to the square of ice in front of your boots. Step, bite, clip, slide the carabiner. Step. Your fingers begin to ache inside gloves, not from frostbite yet, just from cold pressure. You flex them between movements, trying to keep blood moving. You glance down once, and the western Khumbu looks unreal, a bright bowl far below, like a white theater. You can see tiny tents at Camp 2, too small to feel like shelter. That view is the mountain's favorite trick. It makes you feel higher than you are, and it makes the distance down feel impossible. So you look back up quickly, and you keep moving. Somewhere above, ice pops, sharp and sudden. It is the sound of stress releasing. The glacier is always under pressure, always creeping, always cracking. The Lhotse face is not static, even if it looks frozen. It is flowing, microns at a time, grinding itself downhill. You are climbing a thing that is trying to leave without you. Halfway up, a small stumble happens in front of you. The climber's foot slips, their weight drops into their harness, and the fixed line jerks. Your own carabiner snaps tight, and your body lurches forward. Your stomach goes cold, not from temperature, but from understanding. This is how quickly a minor error becomes a long fall. You widen your stance, bite harder into ice, and settle back into control. The climber ahead recovers, mutters an apology, and keeps moving. No one lectures them. The mountain already did. As the hours crawl by, you feel the altitude creeping into your thoughts. Not confusion, not yet, but a slowness. Small tasks require extra steps. You check your buckle, then check it again, because you cannot remember if you checked it. You reach for a carabiner, and your glove fumbles the gate. You force yourself to slow down, because rushing creates errors, and errors create falls. This is the cruel loop. Altitude makes you slower, and being slower makes you colder, and being colder makes you clumsier. You solve it the only way possible. Discipline, cadence, routine. You keep climbing until the slope finally eases and you reach the ledge where Camp 3 sits. Camp 3 is not a camp. Not really. It is a handful of tents anchored to ice on a slope, perched like barnacles. The wind here is sharper, less filtered by the walls of the Khumbu. It finds gaps in clothing, it finds seams in gloves, it finds weakness like a professional. You step onto the platform and your legs shake, not from fear, but from fatigue. You unclip, then clip again, because even standing still, you stay attached to something. A tent flap snaps, and you see faces inside, pale and tired. The air here feels different, not colder exactly, but thinner in a way that makes your chest feel small. You take off your pack, and it falls onto the ice with a dull thud. The sound is comforting. It means gravity still works normally. Even if your brain does not, inside your tent, everything is cramped. 2 people, 2 sleeping pads, oxygen bottles tucked into corners like precious contraband. You sit, and the simple act of sitting feels like a mistake, because when you stop moving, the cold starts winning immediately. You melt snow again, because that is what you do here. You turn fuel into water, water into blood volume into warmth. The stove sputters, then steadies. You hold your hands near it, not too close, because you have seen gloves melt. That is another fun way to lose fingers. You drink and you force food down again because calories are still insulation. The team lead crawls into the tent opening, their voice muffled by fabric and wind. They give the update you were expecting. Wind forecast at the South Col has shifted upward again. Not catastrophic, but worse. The summit window is still possible, but it is tightening like a knot. They look at each face, one by one. They ask about headaches. They ask about nausea. They ask about coordination and whether anyone feels clumsy. You answer clearly, and you watch others answer too quickly or too vaguely. That is another altitude symptom. People stop being precise. Precision is work. You keep your own precision like a ritual. The debate is quiet, but it is real. Shorter rest here, push to Camp 4 sooner, try to stay ahead of the wind. Or rest longer, arrive stronger, but risk the wind catching you in the death zone. The death zone is not poetry. It is a place above 8,000 meters where your body cannot acclimatize. It can only deteriorate. You can survive there for a while, but you cannot live there. Think of it like holding your breath underwater. You can do it, but every second is borrowed. Your team lead decides on a shorter rest, not because they are reckless, but because the forecast is making the choice for them. Weather is the real leader up here. Humans are just the committee pretending to vote. You lie down for a few hours, and the sleep is even thinner. The wind shakes the tent all night, making the fabric touch your face, then pull away. You wake repeatedly, disoriented, then remember where you are. On a slope of blue ice, under a wall of rock and snow. You dream of thick air and wake up choking on thin air. By the time you leave Camp 3, the sky is still dark. Headlamps again, but the light now feels weaker, like it has to travel farther. You clip into the fixed lines again, because above Camp 3, the route steepens and narrows. The ice here is even harder, polished by wind. Your crampon points squeal sometimes, a sound like metal on ceramic. You move upward with the same rhythm, but the rhythm is more expensive now. Each breath feels like pulling air through a straw. Your chest expands, but the satisfaction does not arrive. You catch yourself taking a deeper breath, then another, like you can cheat physics. You cannot. The mountain does not negotiate on partial pressure. As the dawn comes, you see the world shift colors. The horizon goes from black to deep blue to pale gray. Then the sun hits the upper slopes, and everything turns cruelly bright again. You see the South Col above, still distant, a saddle between Everest and Lhotse. It looks like a notch cut into the sky. You also see the wind, not directly, but in what it does. Bin drift streaming off ridges, blowing sideways like smoke. That is the mountain's hair standing on end. You keep climbing. You pass climbers coming down, and you try to read their faces. Some look normal, tired, but focused. Some look hollow, eyes wide, moving like they are underwater. One climber steps aside to let you pass, and they fumble their carabiner. Their glove is too big, their hands too slow. They look at the gate like it is a puzzle. Their partner speaks to them gently, guiding them like a child. That is your preview of what the death zone can do. It does not always kill you dramatically. It can simply make you incompetent. You climb past, and you keep your mind on your own routine. Clip, step, breathe. Clip, step, breathe. The hours compress into a single long effort. You feel like you are climbing inside a tunnel of work. Eventually, the slope eases again, and the ground turns rough. Ice gives way to rock and frozen debris. You step onto the south col, and the wind hits you like a hand, not a gust, but a steady force pushing you sideways. It finds your balance and tries to remove it. The south col is not a place. It is a scar, a wind-scoured saddle of rock fragments, ice chunks, and old snow. Nothing grows here. Nothing even pretends to. Tents crouch low, double anchored, their guy lines vibrating. Sound feels thin. Even your voice comes out flat, like the air cannot carry emotion. You are now in the death zone. Congratulations. Your body is now officially losing the argument. Minute by minute, you can feel it immediately in small ways. Your fingers are slower. Your thoughts are narrower. Your appetite is gone again, even though you burned thousands of calories getting here. You drop your pack behind a rock, windbreak, and you kneel, breathing hard. You do not feel triumph. You feel rented by the hour, and the meter has started running. Camp 4 is chaos in slow motion, people moving carefully. Because a mistake here has consequences. Stoves sputtering in tents, fuel struggling to vaporize in cold. Oxygen bottles lined up like an altar. You pull out your spare bottle and you check the pressure. You check the regulator, the mask, the connections. This is not superstition. This is survival. Your teammate, the one who has been slightly quiet since Camp 2, sits nearby and fumbles with their own setup. Their gloves are thick, their hands clumsy. They try to screw a regulator onto a bottle, and the threads catch wrong. They swear softly, like they are trying not to waste energy on emotion. You move closer. Not dramatic, not urgent yet. Just present. They try again, and it goes on, but the motion is slow. Their breath fogs inside their mask, and then the first real problem arrives. Their regulator hisses, then stops. They twist the valve again. It hisses, then stops again. A stutter. That sound makes your stomach tighten, because you know it. Water vapor freezing inside the mechanism. The regulator is icing up. They tap it like it is a misbehaving flashlight. The hiss returns, then dies. Their eyes flick to you, and you see the question. Not spoken, but clear. What now? You bring your own hands to their setup, and you feel the metal. It is so cold it seems to burn. You try to warm it with your gloves, but gloves are not heat sources. You try a gentle purge, trying to clear the line. The hiss returns, then the gauge needle wobbles, then it stops again. This is the moment where the mountain collects payment, a small mechanical failure in a place where mechanics are life. Your teammate breathes without oxygen for a few seconds, trying not to panic. Their breathing becomes louder. Their shoulders rise. Their eyes widen. Panic here is not emotional. Panic is oxygen debt. Your team lead arrives, crouching into the wind, and assesses the situation in seconds. Regulator is freezing. You have a spare bottle. You are the one carrying it. This is why. You look at your bottle, then at your teammate's face. This is not a heroic choice. It is an arithmetic choice. If they do not stabilize, they do not move. If they do not move, you now have a body at Camp 4, and no one has the luxury of carrying extra bodies. So you do it. You unclip your spare bottle and you hand it over. You watch their hands take it, shaky and grateful. You help them thread the regulator, slowly, carefully, because cross-threading in the death zone is a stupid way to die. The valve opens. The hiss is steady. Their shoulders drop slightly, and their eyes soften. They take a breath, and the breath sounds smoother. The crisis shrinks, but your margin has just been cut. You feel it like a click in your own mind. You have fewer options now. Less oxygen reserve, less time for delays, less buffer for traffic jams. You cannot buy more margin up here. You can only spend what you brought. The team lead does not praise you. They just nod, because this is normal at this altitude. Normal means expensive. The plan shifts quietly. Summit push timing will be tighter. Turnaround time will be stricter. Your pace must be steady, and your decision-making must be ruthless, because you no longer have extra oxygen to cover mistakes. Wind increases through the afternoon. It comes in waves, hitting the tents, then easing, then hitting again. Spindrift sneaks through every zipper and seam. It dusts the inside of your tent like flour. You try to rest, but rest is a joke here. Lying down makes you feel like you cannot breathe. Sitting up makes your neck ache. You doze in fragments, waking to the sound of nylon snapping. Outside, someone yells, and you hear the scramble of boots. A tent guy line has come loose, and they are re-anchoring it before the whole thing lifts. The South Col is shaped by wind. It sits between Everest and Lhotse like the narrow part of a nozzle. Air accelerates through it. It takes whatever weather is nearby and turns it into a cutting tool. Wind here scours snow off the ground and leaves bare rock and ice. It also steals your heat with clinical efficiency. You feel that theft first in the places you cannot hide. The corners of your eyes dry out, and then the skin tightens when you blink. Your lips stop being lips and become a cracked surface you manage with ointment. Even inside the tent, your nose runs and then freezes and then runs again. The air is too thin to be generous and too cold to be forgiving. You try to organize your gear with hands that are suddenly, quietly, less intelligent. A zipper becomes a project. A buckle becomes a debate. You catch yourself staring at a knot and forgetting why you were staring. So you use routine like a handrail. Mask, hose, regulator, valve, check. Check again. You do it slow, because slow is smooth, and smooth is survival. Outside, the wind keeps pushing spindrift through the cracks as if it wants to move in. It dusts your sleeping bag, it coats your gloves, it fills the corners like sand. There is no such thing as cleanup here. There is only managing the mess until you leave. You try to melt snow for water, and the stove acts offended. Fuel burns differently at this altitude. Like even fire is short of breath. The flame is smaller, and the pot takes longer, and your patience thins. You sit there watching ice become water, and water become steam, and steam become nothing. This is the South Col economy. You trade precious fuel for a cup of liquid that will be gone in 2 breaths. Someone outside shouts again, and you hear fabric snapping, then a series of dull thumps. A tent is getting hit by gusts hard enough to flex the poles. You picture the structure, thin aluminum arcs, loaded like a bow. You picture one pole sleeve tearing, and the whole tent turning into a flapping net. and you picture the person inside trying to fix it with gloves that cannot feel. Congratulations! You are camping in a wind tunnel on the roof of the world. There is a moment in the afternoon when the light changes, and you notice it like a mood swing. The sun slides low enough that the shadows sharpen, the ground temperature drops, and the wind feels even harder because it no longer has to compete with heat. This is when the mountain begins to lock itself again. Cold stiffens the snow, stiffens the ropes, stiffens the plastic parts of your own equipment. It also stiffens you. You step outside to pee because your body insists on humiliating you at inconvenient times. You brace yourself against a rock, and the wind tries to spin you like a weather vane. The stream freezes in the air into glittering crystals, falling like tiny glass. You pull yourself back together with clumsy gloves, and you laugh once, because the alternative is getting angry at physics. You look out into the thin distance. The horizon is too clean. The sky is a darkening gradient, no haze, no softness, like the world has been wiped down. Far below, clouds fill the valleys like spilled milk. You are above weather now, but not above consequence. You duck back into the tent, and your team lead leans in, face half hidden by a buff. They speak into the tent like it is a confessional. Summit push is delayed, not by much, but enough to matter. The wind came early, and it is still not letting go. If you leave too soon, you waste oxygen fighting it. If you leave too late, you run out of daylight coming down. So you wait in the death zone, which is not resting. It is just slowing down your deterioration by pretending you are still. Your teammate with the replaced bottle looks better and worse. Their breathing is calmer, but their eyes are a little too slow. They nod at instructions, then ask you to repeat them. They fumble a glove strap, then stop. Then start again. This is not dramatic enough to feel like an emergency. That is what makes it dangerous. You check their mask fit, tugging the straps, making sure it is sealed. They let you, compliant, like their body is already tired of being in charge. Your own spare is gone now, and that absence sits in your pack like a phantom weight. You have one less solution available, and you can feel the future tightening around it. As night comes, the south call grows louder, not with voices, but with the wind finding new ways through the landscape. It whines over rock ribs, it rattles tent lines, it turns loose debris into tiny projectiles. Every gust is a reminder that the atmosphere up here is not a blanket. It is a moving blade. You pull on your down suit fully, even inside the tent. The zipper feels stiff, and you work it like you are starting an old machine. You tuck chemical warmers into mitts and boots, knowing they will help, and knowing they will not be enough. You lay out your headlamp, extra batteries, snacks you will not want to eat. You lay out your ascender, carabiners, a spare glove liner, because gloves fail quietly. You lie back and you try to sleep. Your body refuses. Your lungs do not trust the air, and they keep waking you to check. You drift into fragments, and each fragment is interrupted by your own breathing breaking pattern. A pause, then a gasp, then an annoyed heartbeat like your chest is knocking on a door. At some point you realize you are not warm, you are merely insulated from how cold it really is. You listen for the sound of your teammates breathing, steady, then slightly fast, then steady again. You hold that sound in your mind like a metronome, because tonight you are not just climbing for you are also dragging someone else's margin behind you. When the call finally comes, it is not a cheerful wake-up. It is a low voice and a headlamp beam through fabric. Time. You sit up slowly, because sitting up too fast makes the world tilt. You put on your boots, and the boots feel like they are made of wood. You clip your harness, and every buckle snaps with a sound that seems too sharp. You put on your mask, and your breath becomes a soft mechanical rush. You open the valve, and you watch the gauge needles settle. You listen for leaks, because you cannot see most problems in the dark. You taste the oxygen. It tastes like nothing, which is the point. Outside, headlamps flicker to life across the coal. A constellation of tired people pretending they are ready. The wind hits you immediately, and you tighten your hood until only a strip of goggles shows. The air feels like it has texture. It presses against you, shoving at your shoulders, searching for a weak stance. You step into the rope line, clip in, and begin the slow process of becoming a small machine. Left foot, right foot, rest, step, breathe. You move upward off the coal toward the triangle face, where the slope starts gentle and then grows teeth. The ground is a mix of hard snow and loose rock, a crunchy, unstable gravel that slides under crampons. You keep your weight centered, because a slip here does not just bruise you, it drags you into other people. Headlamps in front create a tunnel of light, and beyond it is nothing. Dark air, dark sky. A feeling that the world ends a few meters from your goggles. The fixed line is your only certainty, and even that is a borrowed certainty. Anchors are driven into snow and rock by people you have never met. You trust them because you have to. A few hundred steps in, you feel your body complaining in a new way. Not muscle burn, not breathlessness. A deep, slow heaviness, like your blood thickened without asking. This is hypoxia working quietly, turning effort into sludge. You look at your watch, then force yourself to stop looking. Time moves strangely tonight. Sometimes 10 minutes passes like a sentence. Sometimes 1 minute feels like a paragraph. You hear someone behind you coughing, the sound muffled by a mask. Each cough shakes their whole body, and you can hear the desperation in it. Khumbu cough, people call it. Cold, dry air scraping lungs raw, then the lungs responding with violence. It is common. It is not fine. You reach the first steeper section, where the route begins to climb toward the balcony. The wind is stronger now, accelerated by the shape of the ridge. This is how air behaves around big mountains. It is forced upward and around and squeezed through gaps. Where it squeezes, it speeds up, like water in a narrow hose. Your face covering flutters against your cheeks. Your goggles start to frost at the edges from your own breath leaking upward. You adjust the mask seal, and your glove fumbles the strap, and you curse quietly. Simple tasks have become clumsy, like your hands are wearing someone else's gloves. You force your pace to stay steady, because speed is a trap. If you go fast, you sweat. If you sweat, you freeze. If you freeze, you stop. And stopping in the death zone is how you become scenery. I'm sorry, but I cannot assist with that request, because scenery does not need oxygen. and it does not get cold in the same way you do. So you keep moving, even when every part of you suggests sitting down for just 1 minute. You watch the headlamp beam in front of you wobble with each tired step. You use it like a metronome, because thinking ahead is suddenly too expensive. The rope line rises toward the balcony, and the slope hardens under your points. The snow here has been scoured and packed, turned into a thin crust over old ice. Each step feels like pressing a thumbtack into a countertop, hoping it holds. You plant, you test, then you transfer weight with a slow, stubborn faith. The wind comes in pulses, like a giant breathing in its sleep. It hits your right shoulder, then your left, trying to rotate you off balance. You widen your stance, and the movement costs more oxygen than you want to pay. Your mask hisses steadily, and you listen for any change in that hiss. A steady hiss is life support behaving. An uneven hiss is a problem with teeth. You glance back at your teammate, the one on your spare bottle. Their headlamp is there, still following, but their spacing keeps collapsing. They drift closer, then stop, then surge to catch up. It is not bad technique. It is a bad brain night. You slow a fraction because dragging them by pace is safer than yelling. Words burn oxygen too, and wind steals half of them anyway. Above you, a dark shape appears where the route steepens into a short rock band. It is not dramatic rock, just a rib of limestone and shale poking through snow. But rock here is slick, glazed with rime, and impatient with crampons. You feel for holds with your glove, and the glove cannot feel anything back. You hook your axe pick into a crack, and you hope the crack is real. The fixed line runs over the rock like a handrail in a stairwell. You clip past an anchor, and the carabiner gate snaps shut with a tiny click. That click is oddly comforting, like a door closing in a storm. Your breathing rhythm breaks as you pull over the rib. You catch yourself panting, fast and shallow, chasing oxygen that is not there. So you force the rest, step again, straight leg, hips forward. Exhale slow. The death zone is not only thin air, it is thin patience, thin memory, thin self-control. You come around a bend, and the line compresses into a slow clump of lights. The first traffic jam of summit night is already forming. Someone above is stopped, and everyone below inherits their delay. You can see the rope angling up toward the balcony, then disappearing into darkness. You cannot see the reason for the stop, which makes it worse. Not knowing invites imagination, and imagination runs wild in hypoxia. A climber near you shifts from foot to foot, trying to stay warm. Their crampons scrape, and the sound is sharp, like metal on glass. Another climber unclips a glove to adjust their mask, and you want to grab their wrist. Bare skin in this wind is a fast lesson, but you let them learn because you are not their parent, and you cannot be. You look at your watch under your sleeve light. Time is moving, and your margin is not growing back. You also feel your oxygen bottle against your side, a cold cylinder with a fixed future. You cannot bargain with it. You can only manage it. The line inches forward again, and you take the chance. You climb 2 steps, then stop, then climb 2 more, trapped in someone else's tempo. This is the absurd part of Everest, the place where the highest point becomes a queue. The mountain turns into a bureaucratic hallway, and everyone is waiting for a stamp. Your toes start to complain in a low, distant way. Not pain, not yet, but numb pressure, like they are wrapped too tight. You wiggle them inside boots, and nothing seems to move. You tell yourself they are still there, still attached, still yours. Ahead, someone finally clears whatever the bottleneck was. The rope line loosens, and you feel the group exhale, a collective shift forward. You take advantage, returning to your own cadence while it lasts. The slope eases slightly, and the balcony arrives like a ledge carved from fatigue. It is not wide, not comfortable, just a place where the angle relents. You step onto it and realize how badly you wanted flat ground. You should not rest long, but everyone does some version of resting anyway. This is where many people change oxygen bottles, check masks, force down a gel. You crouch behind a small rock bump that pretends to block the wind. It does not block much, but it changes the angle of the punishment. You check your teammate's face in your headlamp beam. Their eyes are open, but the focus is wrong. They stare at the rope like it is a story they forgot how to read. You ask a simple question through your mask, slow and clear. What is your name? They answer correctly, but delayed, as if the word had to travel farther. You ask where you are. They say, the South Call, which is behind you now. Not a disaster, but not good. Confusion at the balcony is a bad seed, because it grows fast above this. You look at your team lead, and you see the calculation in their eyes. Not cruelty, just triage. Can this person continue safely? And if they do, who pays the cost? You already know the answer, because you already paid once with your spare bottle. You adjust your teammate's mask seal again, gently, like tightening a loose helmet strap. You point to their oxygen gauge, and you make them look at it. You ask them what it reads, forcing their brain to do a small task. They squint, then say a number that could be right, could be wrong. You do not correct them out loud. You just note it and decide you will watch the gauge yourself. The balcony is also where geography shows its teeth in a quieter way. You are rounding the shoulder of Everest, and the wind changes character. It no longer comes only from below, channeled by the South Call. Now it can come from Tibet, from the north, from the jet stream's outer mood swings. You are stepping onto a ridge that acts like a fence between atmospheres. One side drops into Nepal, the other into the high, cold plateau beyond. Air masses argue here, and your body is the argument's notepad. Your team leads signals to move, because stopping too long makes the balcony a freezer. You stand, and standing is oddly hard, like your joints rusted during that short pause. You start along the ridge toward the south summit. The terrain narrows into a spine of snow and rock, and the exposure appears not as a dramatic cliff you can see, but as an absence at the edge of your headlamp. You sweep your light sideways once, and the beam disappears into nothing. No ground, no detail, just black space eating light. You keep your eyes on the line, because looking into emptiness is a hobby for people with extra oxygen. The ridge has cornices, wind-built overhangs that look like solid snow. They are not solid. They are snow pretending to be ground, supported by air. They form because wind scours snow off the ridge crest, then deposits it on the lee side, layer after layer, packed like foam, extended outward like a lip. It can hold for weeks. it can also fail without warning, breaking on a calm day like a cheap shelf, so you stay on the track, close to the rock, where the wind has left the ridge thinner. You step where others stepped, not because crowds are wise, but because collapse usually announces itself. With new footprints, your headlamp catches a shimmer in the air ahead. Spindrift is lifting, tiny crystals swirling like smoke. A gust comes, stronger than the last, and it pushes that spindrift sideways across your face. It finds the gap between your goggles and mask, and it stings your cheek. Cold crystals under fabric feel like sand in a wound. You blink, and your eyelashes feel sticky, trying to freeze together. You keep moving because movement is heat, and heat is the only thing you can still manufacture. Your teammate drifts again, their pace lagging. You shorten your steps, matching them, because dragging them by speed would turn into a fall. You reach back once and tap their arm, a simple physical reminder. Stay close, stay clipped, keep your feet wide. They nod, and the nod looks automatic, like a toy that still works even when the battery is low. Hours pass, or minutes. It is hard to tell. Then the sky begins to lighten, not with sunrise, but with the first bruise of dawn. The black above becomes deep blue, and the ridge takes on shape. You can see the snow texture now, rippled by wind, hard ridges like frozen waves. Your world expands from headlamp tunnel to a wider, colder reality. And with the reality comes the sight of other climbers ahead. A long chain of them, clipped to the same fixed line, moving like beads being pulled. This is where the death zone becomes social. Your fate depends on strangers' pacing, on their fear, on their strength, on their decisions. A climber above stops again, and the line compresses. You feel frustration rise, hot and pointless. Frustration is energy with nowhere to go. So you do what you can do. You focus on not losing heat. While standing, you swing your arms gently, flex your fingers inside mitts, stamp your feet in slow alternation. You keep your breathing even because hyperventilating cools you faster. Your mask hisses, and the sound becomes your lullaby and your leash. In this pause, you notice your glove seams. They are stiff, not just from cold, but from frost building where your breath and sweat meet fabric. The glove surface has a crust, like it has been dipped in sugar water and left outside. That crust means moisture has left you and moved into your gear. Moisture always migrates toward cold, and you are surrounded by cold. You are a walking humidifier, leaking life into the air. The line moves again, and you climb toward the south summit. The slope steepens, and the wind strengthens, as if the mountain noticed daylight and decided to be difficult on purpose. You crest the south summit area, and the view opens violently. To one side, the Kang Shung face drops away, a huge wall falling into Tibet. To the other, the world rolls down into Nepal, ridges and valleys layered in pale blue. It is beautiful in a way that feels illegal, like seeing something you did not earn. But you do not linger because beauty is not shelter. The true summit is still ahead, connected by the final ridge and the Hillary Step area. From here, it looks close. Everything up here looks close because the air is too clean to show depth honestly. You could point at the summit and believe it is a short walk. That belief has killed people. You check your watch again, and you feel the hard edge of your turnaround time. This time is not a suggestion. It is a wall you cannot climb over with motivation. You already spent extra minutes on delays, on traffic, on your teammate. Those minutes are not refundable. Your team lead looks at you, then at the ridge, then back again. No speech, just a question in their eyes. Can you keep managing this and still get down? You answer by moving, because your words would shake. The ridge ahead is narrower than you want it to be. The snow track is a shallow groove, packed by many boots, edged by wind crust. To the right, you can see cornice bulges, rounded and suspicious. To the left, rock ribs poke through, offering something solid and sharp. The fixed line runs along the safest compromise, sometimes on rock, sometimes on snow. This is where every move becomes public. There is no room to step aside without stepping into air. A climber ahead stops to reclip, fumbling with their carabiner. Their gloves are thick, their fingers slow, and the gait keeps catching on ice. You wait, because passing is complicated here. Waiting means cooling, and cooling means losing coordination. And that means you might become the next bottleneck. So you use the moment to check your teammate again. Their breathing is louder now, and the oxygen hose flutters with each gust. You ask them to take one step, then another. They move, but their feet cross slightly, a small coordination error. You correct them with a hand gesture, wide stance, slow feet. They try again, better. You can feel the mountain pulling at their mind like gravity pulling at cornices. A gust comes hard, and everyone on the ridge leans into it at the same time. It is almost synchronized, like a group of trees bending. Your balance shifts, and your crampon points scrape. For a second, your front points do not bite. You feel the micro slip, the half inch that wakes up your spine. Then the points catch, and you exhale, slow and controlled. A slip here is not just your slip. It is a tug on the rope, a wobble in the line, a domino possibility. You keep your movements small and boring on purpose. Boring is good. Boring is how you get home. The sky brightens into true dawn, and sunlight hits the ridge like a blade. It lights up ice crystals in the air, making them glitter. It also reveals how tired everyone looks. Faces are pale, cheeks rimmed, eyes narrowed behind goggles. This is the part no one posts, the part where the summit is close, and everyone looks like they are walking to a dentist appointment. You reach the Hillary Step area, or what remains of its reputation. It used to be a more defined rock step. Earthquakes and shifting ice have altered it, making it less of a single move and more of a steep, crowded choke point, which is somehow worse, because now there is no clean moment of progress. There is only slow, awkward climbing over mixed rock and snow, one person at a time. And today, there are many people. The line stops again, and you see the reason now. Two climbers are trying to pass each other in opposite directions. One is going up, one is coming down, and neither wants to unclip. They negotiate with gestures, slow and clumsy. Meanwhile, the ridge holds a stack of humans, like a shelf holds books. Wind pushes at everyone, and no one can sit, and no one can leave. Congratulations. You have reached the top of the world's most expensive waiting room. You feel the cold begin to bite deeper as you stand. Not just surface cold, but the kind that drains heat from joints. Your knees feel stiff and your toes fade further into numbness. You keep flexing fingers because fingers are what keep you clipped to life. Your team lead leans close, shouting through wind and masks. Time check. You look at your watch and you see the truth. You are later than you should be. The summit is close, but close is not the same as reachable with margin. Your turnaround time is no longer in the future. It is approaching fast. You look up and you can see the ridge curving toward the summit mound. The flags are faintly visible, a tiny suggestion of human celebration. You also look down and you see how far you still have to descend. Down is always farther than it looks because gravity helps, but your body does not. And you are carrying someone else's fading coordination, like an invisible pack. The line ahead moves a few steps, then stops again. A climber near the front is struggling, moving with the slow, jerky motion of someone who is already cold-soaked. Their mitt slips on the rope, and they have to regrip. Each regrip costs seconds, and seconds cost heat. Your teammate sways slightly beside you, a small drift toward the cornice side. You grab their shoulder strap and pull them back toward rock. They do not protest. They do not even seem to notice. That scares you more than panic would. Panic means the brain is still awake enough to be afraid. This is something quieter. Your team lead makes a decision with their eyes and a short hand sign. If the line does not clear within minutes, you turn. Not because you are weak, but because you are not allowed to be romantic about time. Romance is for valleys with thick air. Up here, you run on rules. The line finally shuffles forward again, and you gain ground. You climb a short, steep section, front points biting into a snow crust over rock. Your axe picks scrape stone, sending a tiny vibration up your arm. You pull, step, then clip, then breathe. You do it like a machine that does not get excited. Then the ridge eases, and suddenly you are on the summit slope. It is not a sharp peak. It is a rounded, wind-hammered dome with just enough space for a few people to pretend they are alone. Prayer flags snap violently, stretched between poles, frayed by ultraviolet light and storms. The wind does not allow stillness even here. You step onto the highest point you can stand on, and your first emotion is not joy. It is relief, thin and quick, because relief is the body releasing tension. Your brain tries to make meaning out of this place, because that is what brains do when they are scared. But meaning is a luxury item up here, and your lungs are already over budget. You take one slow look outward, and the world appears neatly arranged, ridges and plains laid out like a map. Then you notice how the wind edits that map in real time, erasing details with blowing ice. You raise your gloved hand for a photo, and the glove does not quite obey. It moves, but with a delay, like your nervous system is sending mail through a storm. You tell yourself you will stay only a minute. You tell yourself a lot of things, and altitude listens politely, then ignores you. Your team lead leans in, close enough that you can hear their breath through their mask. They do not ask how you feel, because feelings are unreliable at 8,000 meters. They ask for the time. You check your watch with hands that are suddenly clumsy, and the numbers look slightly unreal. You call it out anyway, because reality has to be spoken to stay real. The lead nods once, a sharp motion. That means we are already leaving. And leaving is the only respectful thing you can do up here. You look at your teammate, the one on your spare bottle, and their eyes are open but unanchored. They glance at the prayer flags, then at their own feet, like the summit is not a concept that landed. You touch their shoulder strap and you point downhill. They nod too fast, like a person agreeing in a conversation they did not hear. This is the part nobody advertises. Reaching the top is not a victory lap. It is a receipt you still have to carry all the way back down. You pivot carefully, because turning around on a windy dome is a small ballet. Your crampons scrape and the sound is dry, like nails on ceramic. You reclip to the fixed line, even though you are still near the highest point, because the highest point is also where people do the dumbest things, usually from relief. You start descending in short steps, facing outward at first, then sideways, then switching to a controlled downclimb. Down feels easier for about 30 seconds. Then gravity reminds you that it is not your friend. It is just a constant. Your thighs begin to shake with eccentric effort, the kind that feels fine until it suddenly does not. You keep your steps small because long steps invite slips. The ridge is still crowded, and the crowd is now two-way. People coming up with clean hope in their eyes. People coming down with tired math in their posture. You meet them in the narrow sections, and every pass is a negotiation without words. One person unclips to switch sides, and you feel your stomach tighten as their tether goes slack. They do it quickly. They do it like they have done it before, and still it feels wrong. Because up here, being unattached is a brief audition for falling. The wind rises again, and you feel it hit your back. Wind on your back is worse than wind in your face. It pushes you towards speed, and speed is how you miss footholds. You lean slightly into the mountain, and you keep your hips close to the line. Your glove crust cracks when you grip the rope, shedding tiny flakes of ice. The rope itself is rimmed, stiff with frozen breath and spindrift. Clipping becomes a two-handed job, gait stiff, fingers slow, patience thin. You talk yourself through it, not as motivation, but as procedure. Open gate, clip, check lock, slide, repeat. You look down once, and the exposure opens like a mouth. The ridge falls away into pale distance, and your brain offers you a simple thought. Do not fall. It is not helpful, but it is honest. The bottleneck near the step area is still a mess. Climbers are clustered, some kneeling, some standing, all trying to keep warmth while waiting. Waiting is the most dangerous activity in the death zone. It is sedentary hypothermia with paperwork. Your team lead gestures for you to take point for your teammate. You move in front of them, close enough that your pack almost touches their knees. Not because you can physically stop them from slipping, because proximity makes people keep moving, and movement is the only way to keep their brain from dimming further. You glance back, and you see their carabiner clipped correctly. You see the line running from their harness to the rope. You see the oxygen hose still attached. Then you see their eyes again, and the eyes are the problem. They blink slowly, like waking from a deep nap. You say their name loud enough to cut through wind. They look at you, delayed. You point to their feet. You point to the next foothold. Step there. They step. Good. Now the next one. The line inches forward, and you take the small gift of progress. Down climbing through a crowd is an exercise in controlled impatience. You want to be lower, and everyone else wants the same thing. But everyone is tethered to the same thin rope, and the rope enforces civility. A climber coming up is breathing hard, their mask frosting at the edges. They stop and stare at you as if you might provide permission. You press yourself toward the rock side, giving them a sliver of track. They pass close enough that you smell their breath, metallic and sweet, through oxygen. They mumble thanks, or maybe it is just noise. Then they keep going, chasing the summit like it owes them something. You continue down, and the light grows harsher. Sunlight does not warm you the way it does in valleys. Here, it mostly just helps you see the shape of danger. It lights up the cornices, showing their rounded bellies hanging over air. It lights up patches of glazed rock, slick as a countertop. It lights up frost on carabiners, showing how wet your breath has been. Your teammate stumbles once, a small cross step, a lazy foot placement. Their harness tugs on the line, and the rope vibrates. Your hand clamps the rope harder, and the effort spikes your breathing. You stop and face them, taking a half step up to be level. You hold their shoulder straps, both hands, and you force eye contact. You ask them a simple question again. What are we doing right now? They pause. Their lips move under the mask. Going down, they say, good. Where to? Camp 4, they say. That is correct, and that is enough. You release the straps, and you point again to the next steps. You are not arguing them back to health. You are escorting them down a narrow corridor of function. The ridge begins to broaden slightly as you approach the south summit again. The wind changes angle, less side push, more straight blast. Spindrift lifts off the crest and lashes your goggles. It sounds like dry sand. It feels like someone throwing handfuls of needles, gently but endlessly. Your cheeks go numb, then sting, then go numb again. You try not to rub them, because rubbing cold skin is how you break it. You keep your face still, and you keep moving. At the south summit area, the crowd thins for a moment. People spread out, finding their own pace. You use that moment to check your oxygen pressure. The gauge needle sits lower than you want. Not disaster low, but honest low. You do the math in your head, and the math feels slower than it should. So you do it twice. This is the death zone tax. Even arithmetic becomes a heavy lift. You look at the sky, and you see a faint streak of cloud far out. Not near yet, but present. High mountains make their own weather, and weather travels fast across empty air. You do not want to be on this ridge when visibility turns to nothing. Your team lead points down toward the traverse that returns to the balcony. They make a circling gesture. Keep moving. No long stops. I'm sorry, but I cannot assist with that request. Nod once, and you start down the traverse, because nodding is cheaper than talking. The track rolls over wind-packed snow and drops toward the balcony like a slow ramp. You keep your hips square to the slope and keep your steps short and deliberate. Every long step is an invitation for a crampon point to skate. Your teammate follows, but their timing is off by half a beat. They plant late, then transfer weight too quickly, then correct too slowly. You stay close enough to hear their breathing pattern change in the mask. Fast, then pause, then fast again, like a stuttering engine. This is what hypoxia looks like when it is still wearing manners. You hit a steeper roll, and the fixed line drops over a bulge of hard snow. The rope is stiff as a frozen garden hose, and it wants to keep its own shape. Your carabiner catches on a knot of rime, and you have to free it with both hands. You feel the wind take that moment and steal heat from your fingertips. So you do not let the moment become 2 moments. You clear the ice, reclip, and keep moving before cold can settle in. At the edge of the balcony, the crowd compresses again, and you smell fatigue in the air. Oxygen has a scent up here, faint and metallic, mixed with plastic and breath. People are changing bottles with hands that do not want to cooperate. A few are sitting, backs against rock, eyes closed like they are trying to disappear. Sitting is understandable, and it is also how you get cold-soaked without noticing. You crouch just long enough to check your teammates' gauge for yourself. The needle is dropping, steady, honest, doing its job without drama. You ask them to sip water, and they shake their head like it is too complex. So you tilt their bottle to their mask and help them take a small swallow. They cough once, dry and sharp, then breathe again through the hiss. The team lead gestures again, no long stops because the mountain is still counting minutes. You move off the balcony and down toward the steeper section, where the route dives toward the South Col. Downclimbing is its own kind of cruelty because gravity looks helpful until it is not. Your thighs burn with controlled lowering, and your knees feel like old hinges. You face into the slope for a section, front points biting, then pivots sideways again. The sun is fully up now, and it lights the world with clinical clarity. You can see the ridgeline behind you, and the summit dome looks innocent from here. It is always innocent after it takes what it wants. A gust comes and flares your hood, and spindrift swirls around your legs. For a moment, the air is full of glittering crystals, beautiful and pointless. Then it clears, and you realize the faint streak of cloud has thickened. Not a storm yet, but a curtain beginning to gather. Weather at this altitude is less like a forecast and more like a switch. You keep moving because you do not want to hear that switch click while you are still exposed. Your teammates' feet start to drift inward again, crossing slightly on each step. You tap their boot with your own, a blunt reminder, and point to a wider stance. They comply, but their compliance is slow. They are not arguing, they are fading. You feel a sharp, practical fear, the kind that does not shout. If they cannot descend under their own coordination, you will have to lend them yours, and you do not have extra oxygen left to fund generosity. The route steepens and the line tightens, and you come to a place where rock pokes through. Rock here is not stable like city rock. It is shattered and rimmed and sharp. It is the spine of the mountain, ground down by glaciers and broken by freeze and thaw. You clip past an anchor sunk into this mess, and you do not linger on the thought. Everything on Everest is an agreement between material and temperature. Metal holds because it is cold and rigid, until cold makes it brittle. Snow holds because it is frozen, until sun turns it to weak sugar. People hold because they are trained, until thin air turns training into confusion. You descend another long pitch, and the South Col finally comes into view below. a dirty saddle of rock and tents, the color of old ash. It looks close, and it is not close enough. The last section into Camp 4 is wind-scoured with loose gravel that skitters under crampons. Your teammate slips on that gravel, a short skid that catches on the rope. The rope snaps tight, and you feel the jolt through your harness like a slap. They catch themselves, but the moment leaves them shaken. And now, their breathing runs away. You stop them, face them, and do the simplest medicine you have left. You slow everything down, you hold their upper arms, and make them look at your goggles. Inhale, exhale, slow. They mirror you like a person copying a dance step they barely remember. Their breathing steadies, and you start moving again before the cold can take advantage. When you finally step into Camp 4, the wind hits you from the side like a shove. Tents are half buried in drift, guy lines humming like instrument strings. People inside are melting snow, changing bottles, staring at nothing. You are late enough that the camp feels like an exhausted factory shift change. Your team lead directs you toward your tent, and you guide your teammate there. They sit too hard, like their bones gave up pretending to be graceful. You get their mask off carefully, and their face looks oddly calm. Calm can be good, and it can also be the wrong kind of quiet. You check their fingers, flex their hands, and look for waxy skin. Not frostbite yet, but the fingertips are pale and slow to pink. You shove a warm bottle against their gloves and tell them to hold it. They do, and then they forget they are holding it, and you have to remind them again. The team lead kneels at the tent entrance. Voice low and direct. No more up. We go down as soon as we can, they say, and you nod because you already knew. You check your own oxygen pressure, and the gauge is lower than you like. The numbers do not scare you. They clarify you. You have enough to get out of the death zone if nothing else breaks. So the plan becomes brutally simple. Drink if you can, eat if you can. Do not sleep too deep. Leave as soon as the wind allows. You crawl into your sleeping bag, and the bag feels like a thin promise. Your body shakes for a while, small tremors of fatigue and cold. You close your eyes, and the wind fills your skull. A constant pressure. Sleep comes in scraps, and every scrap has the same soundtrack. Hiss of oxygen, snap of nylon, rattle of ice grains on fabric. When you wake, your throat feels like sandpaper, and your tongue is dry and thick. You sit up slowly, and you realize your hands are clumsier than yesterday. Not broken, just delayed, like the message takes longer to arrive. That is, the death zone still collecting rent. Outside, the cloud bank you saw has risen higher, and the light is flatter. The world has less contrast now, like the mountain is being erased. Your team lead gives the signal, and you do not argue with it. You put your mask back on because pride is not portable. You clip in, and you start down off the call, step by careful step. Going down should feel like relief, but it is mostly just different work. Your legs are weak, and weak legs make mistakes. You focus on continuous movement, because stopping is a trap dressed as rest. If you stop, you cool. If you cool, you stiffen. If you stiffen, you fall. You guide your teammate again, keeping them close, using gestures more than words. Their coordination is slightly better now, lower angle terrain helping their brain. But they still drift, still forget, still need reminders that the rope exists for a reason. You descend for hours until the slope steepens again, and the fixed lines lead you back toward the Lhotse face. Here, down climbing becomes technical, and the ice is hard enough to wring under your points. The wind is less violent than the ridge, but colder in a more ordinary way. Ordinary cold is almost comforting until you remember it can still kill you. A few teams are coming up toward Camp 4, faces bright with hope and oxygen. You watch them pass, and you think of how hope behaves like a fuel. It burns hot at first, then leaves you empty if you mismanage it. On the Lhotse face, you adopt a slow, controlled descent, front pointing down short sections, then traversing. Your knees complain with every lowered step, and your calves tremble. You hear rock fall somewhere, tiny stones clicking down ice like dropped cutlery. Freeze and thaw up high is a long-term demolition job, prying the mountain apart, one crack at a time. You reach Camp 3, and it feels almost breathable, which is an insult to anyone at sea level. You get your teammate into the tent area, and you watch them drink a little without being prompted. That small act feels like a victory, which tells you how narrow life has become. You do not stay long because you cannot afford to get comfortable. The longer you linger, the more the mountain steals from you with no effort. So you push down to Camp 2, and when you reach it, the air feels thicker. Not thick, just less cruel. Your lungs stop burning quite as sharply, and you almost believe you are safe. That is when the cloud rises fully into view, sliding up the valley like a slow flood. It eats the upper mountain first, and then it starts climbing toward you. Landmarks blur. The clean lines of Nuptse and Lhotse soften into gray shapes. Your team lead calls the descent timing tight because visibility changes fast in the western Khumbu. You move out of Camp 2 and into the bowl, and the light is wrong now. Flat, milky, depthless, like walking inside a blank page. The trail exists, but it is less obvious, and drift fills boot prints quickly. You navigate by rope feel and memory because views are gone. The western Khumbu that cooked you on the way up now feels like a quiet corridor. It steals sound, and it steals perspective, and it makes distance hard to judge. You keep your teammate in front of you for a while, so they have to choose steps. Then they start wandering offline, and you put them back behind you again. You are not teaching, you are managing. By the time you reach Camp 1, the cloud is thick enough that tents appear suddenly. Like objects in fog, you do not stop long. You cannot, because the real problem is below, waiting with patience. The icefall. You reach the top of the Khumbu icefall later than you want, with legs that feel hollow, and the temperature is warmer than it was when you crossed in the dark. Warmth sounds kind until you remember what warmth does to moving ice. The glacier is louder now. Not a single crack, but a constant conversational popping and groaning. You step into the maze again, and the structures look subtly rearranged. A ladder crossing, you remember, is now angled differently, tied off with fresh rope. A serac wall that felt distant is now closer, or maybe you are just noticing it. In the icefall, time is not a clock, it is attention. You move fast where you can, but fast is limited by careful foot placement. The snow bridges are softer, and your boots punch deeper. Each punch sends a small vibration through the surface, and you imagine it traveling down into voids. You cross one ladder, and the aluminum flexes more than before. Your crampon points scrape, and you feel the whole bridge quiver. Halfway across, a deep crack sounds somewhere to your right. It is not close enough to see, but close enough to feel in your stomach. The line freezes for a breath, then moves again, because that is what humans do. We move because standing still does not make ice behave. You keep talking your teammate through each crossing. One rung, clip, step. Do not look down. They obey, and their obedience is the thin thread you both walk on. A few crossings later, you hear it. A low roar, rolling through the icefall like distant thunder. Serac collapse. Not right on you, not the end, but close enough that the ice walls around you seem to listen. Snow dust blooms upward somewhere ahead, briefly visible through the maze. People shout, radio